All right, should we get started? Carol, looking good?
Looks perfect. Let's do it.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining the workshop today. I hope you've been enjoying the conference. We're doing this workshop twice for different time zones. You're first, so sorry. It's going to be better for the next group. No, I hope you find this is a good 2 hours of your time. If you've ever, you're probably also doing workshops and work sessions for people in your job, so you know kind of how crazy it is to try to pull something like this off. So we'll see how we do. My name's Patrick. I'm the CEO of Harmonic, and facilitating also today are Jeff Harris and Carol Massá, so you'll get to know them along the way. What we're going to be doing today is breaking into 3 smaller groups to do the activity part of the workshop. So you'll spend a good bit of time with one of us, but each of us are going to be presenting today. And just a little bit about Harmonic. Harmonic is a company, we're a little over 2 years old. We are in Atlanta, Georgia, in the south of the United States with clients in North America currently. We are specialists in service design, so we've actually built the company around service design as our value proposition and core service. Our model is not just doing service design for companies, but really doing with. So we work with a lot of companies to build service design capabilities into their organization, and that could be with innovation teams, design teams, product teams, operations. We've kind of worked with all different parts of companies. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to introduce you to some thinking around something that we're calling Experience Tapestry, and I'll explain what that is. And it's really a frame that I'm providing the Harmonic organization to kind of push our practice. And then within that, we're going to walk you through today in practice a method that we have been experimenting with called Experience Mesh, which is a sense-making technique to get people to start to really think about the experiences of different actors in an ecosystem rather than everyone is in service of a customer and not thinking about really the experiences of other people. And then what we hope you walk away from this today is getting a feel for that, some of the concepts underneath it, and hopefully armed enough to go maybe try this or things like it within your organization. All right, so the way we're going to be working on this today is I'm going to give you a little overview of Experience Tapestry. This is a little more philosophical with a little bit of practicality, but then we're going to get into the practical stuff. So Carol's going to walk you through Experience Mesh. We're going to do that as an activity. That's going to be the majority of our session. And then Jeff is going to help us think about how to connect that method to other methods that you may be doing or could be doing. So the tools we'll be using for today are Zoom, obviously. Hi, everybody. While talking Zoom. We're going to be taking you over to Miro. So hopefully you've used tools like Miro or Mural or all the other tools that are out there. But that's going to allow us to actually do the workshop activity. And during that, we're going to leverage some videos that we put on YouTube. So we'll give you those links and walk you through how to use those, because what we're doing in the workshop is simulating doing this method in a workshop. So a little meta thing going on. All right, so Experience Tapestry. So I think a lot about storytelling in practice in general, and I'm sure you do too. I think a lot of what we do in designs is about stories. We're collecting stories, we're analyzing stories, we're creating new stories, we're telling stories to get people to go do the same thing as an organization. And of course, stories is really deep in what makes us human and how we understand the world. So I've been thinking about this metaphor or analogy of a tapestry. So tapestries, are these visual narratives. They're made up of all of these actual literal threads, like made out of linen, but also they have woven within them these stories within a story. So a tapestry often depicts a moment, but if you look at that within it, there's all these little other stories playing out. So kind of thinking about that, what we've been playing with in our practice is thinking about the tapestry and and ecosystems, because one of the things that we've been trying to push our clients to is to really think more about the dynamics of the ecosystems, about the dynamics of relationships, about the changing value that happens in the ecosystem, and looking for ways to help them kind of understand it and engage in doing work that is building that out. So we've been thinking about Tapestry as quite simply that if you think about from a human perspective, if you're focused on a service or a business or a problem space, that it's full of people, and all of those people, their lives are playing out, and all of these stories that are their lives intersect in different ways in different moments. Sometimes they're sharing a moment, sometimes they're impacting one another. And so thinking about these stories that we hear and how do you unpack those stories and think about how to build better stories. So what this has been making me think is then thinking about the services designer as a weaver. And that what a weaver does is they construct this tapestry, right? And so a lot of what we do as service designers is we're working with all these people within organizations, and we're orchestrating getting different information, having different conversations, understanding all these different perspectives, and we're often harmonizing those into one thing, like what the service is, a vision for the service, or a service blueprint. All the things that we make are a lot of dot connecting, right? We're pulling these threads together. So within our practice, the other thing that we've got these kind of 4 things that I'm really pushing and we're all thinking about. So one is that organizations tend to, there's been a big push over the last 20 years to be more customer centric, but the model is still very much thinking about business and customer. So one thing that we've been trying to do is to get people to understand more that we're really dealing not with customer centricity, but polycentrism, meaning that there are many centers and that every person that's in the ecosystem is someone who creates value and should receive value. And so that we need to really develop methods and really understand these different perspectives and the dynamics within it. And that's not a nice to have, that's how you actually create better services, better experiences, push innovation. The second thing that we think a lot about as service designers is, of course, service dominant logic. So if you've read about service dominant logic or use it in your practice, what we're trying to do with all of our methods and all of our work is to get organizations to break away from this thinking about I make something and ship it and all the value is within that, to thinking about these ecosystems, all these interactions that happen, and how value is co-created through those interactions. And that there's a lot of different moving parts, and that you can design for that, and that service design has a toolkit that you can to do that. And so as we walk through the mesh method today, this is very much embedded in this, which is how are we thinking about all the needs of people? How are we thinking about all of those dynamics, and how do we harmonize those into better outcomes? The other thing that that we've been pushing in our practice is really looking at moments as the place where value is co-created. So in a lot of, we do a lot of journey mapping, we do a lot of service blueprinting, we do a lot of ecosystems, lots of different things. But when you cut across all of those, what we've noticed is that this concept of identifying a level of granularity called a moment is a very good connector within organizations. So one way we think about it is when you break down a journey and you're thinking about the moments within it, who are the actors in that moment? So for example, if there's a customer employee interacting, that they both have functional, emotional, and social needs, and they both have a desired outcome. And then when they interact, that's when the value is actually created. And then in a lot of organizations, these are separate projects. So someone might be looking at the customer experience and another might be looking at the employee experience. And maybe if you're doing one of those projects, you talk about the employees or maybe interact with them a little bit or vice versa. We are pushing organizations to look at all the actors together as one project because it is one problem instead of dividing it up by these different people. And that moments are a way to really understand the dynamics within it. Then where we've been pushing that with organizations is if you start to do that and you understand the moments within people's within how they work, how they experience a company and services, you can start to connect those dots And that is your connective tissue to your business strategy and eventually to your organizational capabilities. That moments are a really easy way to connect those dots, and they have embedded within them human needs. And so one of the things we've been really pushing as a practice is how do we get human needs to be part of the operating system of a company? And the moments we're finding is a really great way to do that. So what we're going to focus on today is one method in our toolbox that we've been developing around this kind of conceptual thing that we've been pushing on. We're doing other things with changing how we do research, rethinking experience mapping, taking things like job to be done and hacking them to make them more less product centric. Lots of different things, too much to cover in 2 hours. So we wanted to give you a taste of this, and then we can talk about those concepts as we start to go through the workshop. But we wanted to share this before we jump into it, because this philosophy beneath it, the method is intentionally simple, but what we have a very high, the things behind it are very important concepts that we think organizations should embrace to adapt and thrive in what's becoming, hey, a more complex, strange world, right? So, all right, you're up, Carol.
Awesome. Thanks, PQ. Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Massá. Nice to meet you all. Really excited to share with you this methodology we've been developing in the past year. We have tons of good stuff, so let's get started. One thing that I want to emphasize is what we should start with. What is mesh, right? Mesh is a simple, as PQ just mentioned, sense-making technique driven by storytelling activity that combines multiple actors' stories into one single view of a service experience. So some call outs to be so that you can start internalizing what that method, what this technique is. So it's pretty straightforward. There is no science fiction, anything that it's super complicated. And it's definitely something that anyone could potentially, own it, facilitate it, and we want you to have a taste of this today. Some of the things that the mesh can do for you. So we identified at least 4 main things. This is an ongoing methodology, so we're building as we go. But what we came up with so far is that this technique can help identify opportunities for reimagination and optimization of service experiences. It can also visualize experience gaps across actors, considering beyond one protagonist. It can also surface individual and collective needs that need to be aligned in order to fulfill or provide a certain experience. And it also provides you a way to evaluate interdependent and shared moments in a sequence of time. Some interdependent moments, you're going to see a few examples as you go through the exercise. Interdependent moments are going to be things like, for example, HR might send you an offer letter, and then the new hire would potentially receive that offer letter. A shared moment would be, what does that first day for the new hire look like? He'll probably be meeting at the same time in the same moment with his team. So just to get our head started into how, some of the level of granularity we'll be dealing with during this exercise. And it's also important to state what mesh is not. So you might find yourself, making some connections visually. Oh, it looks like an experience map. It looks like a journey map. It looks like a blueprint. One thing right off the bat, as you can see in this picture, is very drafty. It's not a deliverable. It's pretty much a very crafted way that you can lay out stories across actors. And it's not driven by technical requirements. So we're not looking at supporting systems and policies and organization capabilities during this method. And one more thing, so it's not about the details. So we're not digging deeper into the specifics of that step. We're looking at this middle tier of a moment that it's either shared, interdependent, or unique to an actor, but that moment could express needs across individually and collectively. And the next one, yeah. So when you think about the technique, there are a couple of key things here that you should define. The first thing is when to use this technique. So you're looking at, let's say you're really early in the process, you're in the discovery phase, and you're really trying to understand what type of service experience you're dealing with. What are the actors involved in that? So it could really help bring alignment to stakeholders and focus on a challenge that it's going to drive value to most actors. What types of projects? We're looking at projects that are cross-disciplinary, so highly collaborative, and in that scope of project, because it's cross-disciplinary, you would benefit from an outside in and inside out perspective. And when it comes to who to invite, so we're looking at this when doing this method, you might want to consider choosing 3 to 4 actors to focus at a time, and then make sure that you select subject matter experts that could either represent or even be those actors during the technique. And one thing also that I like to emphasize when you're planning to do this type of method, the roles in the session. I cannot stress enough that how important this is for this type of technique. It requires high level of facilitation. So we're looking at a main facilitator. We're looking at, because it's a cross collaborative, you could also, depending the number of people you have in the room, you're gonna have small groups, so you're gonna need small group facilitators. And one of the main roles here is the note taker. A lot of this technique will be very much towards communication and discourse and discussions. So those discussions need to be documented in a very simple written format. And you guys are going to be playing that role today, so it'll be really exciting. So you get the feel for the observer and also doing a very important part of the technique. And, you know, just to hit again, subject matter experts for sure. And you want to consider a mixed level of participants. So different levels of seniority, leadership, all the way to people doing the work. You just want to make sure that you have those people that can represent the actors you chose. How does it work? Right. You'll probably be asking, what does the technique look like in a more of a step-by-step? Not necessarily, don't consider this a recipe, because it changes on what you're going to probe on and the actors itself. It's not a one and done. But at a high level, you first want to consider deciding who those actors are that can best benefit for the project that you have at hand. And then when you get to that alignment in your core team and among stakeholders, you're looking at pretty much dividing the room into small groups, and they're going to be working in their own teams individually, and they're going to be describing those protagonists' perspectives and stories. And then they're still going to be in their small teams when they identify some of the key moments of those actors. And then on number 4, that's pretty much when the magic starts to happen, is when you're in the room and everybody comes together and people act out or even share the stories in a very engaging way. And then while they're presenting, the other folks from the other actors, they start to hear, you know, very abstract here, hear the clicks going on. Oh, if that actor is going through that, that will reflect on my actors. So there's a lot of a good discussion that happens on number 4. And then as you go through 5 and 6, that's when you start to pretty much narrow your focus on, okay, now we're looking at these actors, we know their own perspectives. How do they come together? What are the shared moments? What are the interdependent moments? How does that work across actors? And then eventually you would start to see and identify visually opportunity areas. And that will help you frame what happens next, so that you can investigate further a specific part of that mesh or a specific actor that you really want to take care of that, because it can trigger, you know, lots of consequential unintended consequences for the service experience. And then eventually there'll be other service design methods that you're going to be pulling into to help you solve for the challenges that the mesh provided you to see. And here are a couple of things that So yeah, thank you. Here are a couple of examples that you could see how it would work in person versus remote, which you'll be experiencing today, the remote. So in person, this one is an example where we had 3 actors. So as you can see on the wall, each actor has a color-coded moment card, and they went through and explained each actor's stories during an onboarding experience. The second example that we have is a remote one where we had 2 actors, and it was a very high touch experience. So you were looking at a service provider and the customer being interacting pretty much throughout one service experience. So it's pretty tight. And as you can see, there are connections, there the building blocks there of the gray squares are opportunity areas that you saw. You even see some loosen up dots in there. It's all part of the conversation. And yeah, you're seeing here visually. And then the third example is actually a more, not necessarily complex one, but it was an interesting one that we looked at a B2C context. And we actually identified 4 actors, and we used it as a starting point, an experience that a customer would be going through, during this pandemic to pick up groceries. So for this one, we actually identified a different way to look for opportunities for optimization. As you can see, there are repetitive patterns that might be different pieces of that experience that could be optimized. And then the last part of this, yes, I'll just start talking about this now, and then Jeff, towards the end of the workshop, will pretty much expand on this, how it differs from other service design methods, right? So here we're looking at the emotional experience side. So we're looking at the stories that go beyond a single protagonist. Everyone here has your own story, and they have their own needs, and also it's something that you would eventually, from the technique perspective, you would see it individually happen, but then collaboratively. And that exercise of starting individually, going collectively, does provide a lot of key insights. There's a really lower learning curve, if not, I would even attempt to say 0 learning curve for non-designers to participate and engage in this method. And, as you think through, you probably saw the arrows, you're like, oh, but that's a service blueprint. Well, we're not capturing or defining any requirements or details of this experience. We're not looking at front stage, separating backstage. We're looking at the stories that the actors are going through. I guess that's it. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, just to give you, before we transition to our small groups, just to give you a little bit of taste of the key differences that usually happens in real life when you probably be doing this versus today. So today, we won't have any subject. Well, Patrick, Jeff will be the subject matter experts in the room. And as you can see, I think PQ already mentioned, you're going to have some video simulation going on. So they'll be your subject matter experts for the day. And we have already pre-selected a few items that you would have had done it collectively. So we already selected the actors. We already identified the criteria for that selection. And it takes 2 sessions of 2 to 4 hours for you to have a full experience of converging and diverging actors and needs and stories. And we're going to try to do it in 80 minutes. So that will be fun. Anything else PQ would like to add before we move magically into our breakout rooms?
It is actually 75 minutes, so we will. But you'll get a good taste of the mechanics and things, and hopefully a lot of things we're trying to introduce here are a lot of the concepts and ideas of just about thinking this way, because I think most people think in terms of one, like the customer, and like what do we do for the customer. And what we've seen in a lot of work is, and what we hear, of course, when we talk to employees within companies, they kind of wanted to be about them, and we're like, well, it's really about everybody. And so that's a lot of what this technique's about. All right, so let's do this. So Carol is going to throw us into some different rooms. And so when you'll meet one of us there, and we'll get organized and we'll get to work.
Yes, and you're probably going to see a pop-up come up. You have to hit the button that says join. If it did not show up for you, oh, I see some people going. That's awesome. If it did not show for you, it means that you're going to stay here with me. So no hesitation there. You're here. You're good. You're in the right place. Awesome. All right. Let me just give a couple of seconds here. I want to make sure people know or have any questions on how to get there. Just let me know. If not, I think we're good to go. Double check something real quick. All right, and hopefully we have all your names right. So this will be fun. All right, hey guys again. So you're on Team Carol, yay. Thank you so much for being here. I know for some of you it might be pretty late, or even I saw some people from Japan maybe. I don't even know if they're in this group, but it might be really late. So I really appreciate you guys being here. So I'm gonna start by real quick sharing my screen with you. And I have, so yes, as PQ mentioned, you guys are going to be looking at 3 different things. You're going to have a Miro board link, you're going to have a YouTube video, and you're going to have Zoom. So I don't know if you have 1 screen or 2 screens. So there will be some adjustments to be made in the first 15 minutes of this workshop. So just bear with me. There are some logistics we have to get through, get through the bump so that we can comfortably have the discussion about the technique. Does that sound good? Just give me like a thumbs up or yeah. Okay, awesome. Ooh, double thumbs up. Love it. All right. I'll start by sharing my screen. And I don't want to lose everybody here. Give me 1 second. All right, hopefully you can see my Miro board. Let me make sure that the chat is open in case you need some assistance. Yep, thumbs up is great, thank you. I did lose the chat. Okay, all right, so, oh, here it is. I went to the other, perfect. All right, so if you don't see your name here, please speak up or forever hold your peace. So Aaron, you here? Andre? Andre?
Yep, here.
Azidi? Yeah, I hope I said, sorry if I mispronounced it. Dan?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Dan. Oh yeah, hi. Saw you at the happy hour. Diane? I think Diane was not. Yeah, okay, cool. Franziska?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Awesome. Joseph, I don't see here. Let's try Juha. Awesome. I didn't hear you, but I saw you wave, so I think we're good.
Oh, here I am. Hello.
Molly. Hi, Molly. Nozumi. Awesome. Olga.
Here.
Hi. Sorry. I know it feels like a classroom, but we gotta make sure that this is running right. And Scott.
Hi.
Awesome. All right. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is go to this Miro link. Have you used Miro before? Is there a person here who has not either used Miro or Miro? I think people in why I can't send you chat. Give me 1 second. People in Europe call it Miro. I'm just having a really hard time to find where you guys are in my chat box. Okay. Everyone in meeting. Okay. I think I made it work. You should have gotten a Miro link. So please click on that. And the first thing we're going to do, and I'll make sure as you come in, I have you here with me. There's a big star saying start here. Please meet me at that star. All right, I see 8 people here. I guess I'm missing 2 more. Oh, it might be Gabriella. Gabriella, feel free if you want to join us over there. If not,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so for today's simulation, we're going to talk about remote onboarding experience. Hopefully you've been onboarded in some shape or form, so you can get a sense of what this topic is about. And the way that we have designed for you today, this session, is pretty much we're going to go over some collective discussions and then individual discussions and individual tasks and then small group discussions. You're looking at the roles here. I'll bring everyone to me just to make sure. The roles that we're looking for this workshop, as I previously mentioned, Jeff, PQ, and Leah, who's another coworker of ours, they're going to be the subject matter experts and the participants. I'll be the facilitator. You're going to hear a lot of my voice today. And you are going to be the note taker. The note taker is pretty much in charge of capturing what you're hearing on Post-it notes, something very straightforward. And you're going to be part of the discussion as well. So feel free to act out or play out or bring in your onboarding experience as we mesh things up. But for the first period of time, we're pretty much just going to train and do a quick demo on the note taker role so that you can get your fingers warmed up. If you go and follow, I would say the yellow brick road, but it's yellow arrow road, I guess. The next thing we're going to do is a demo. We had to divide you into 2 separate groups. So if you find your name, just hover towards there, making sure that we have all the people and the artboards. Gabby, feel free to take either Diane or Joseph, if you like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a demo video. So what you're going to see for the first 2 minutes will be me interviewing the new hire. And then the last 2 minutes will be actually someone doing what you're supposed to do. So you're going to see there are some Post-its that you have on your artboard, and there are some blank ones after a couple of 4 or 5. What we need you to do is to listen to the video, try to capture what's not here. And the way that you're capturing these notes are not going to be detailed steps oriented. They may not even be in a linear fashion, right? I know that they look pretty and aligned, but I want you to find your own way of capturing these notes, and we're going to talk about that. And we'll probably have a quick discussion before we separate into 2 groups, and then each group is going to have 1 actor to work off of. So it'll be really fun. All right, so since I'm sharing my screen. So Leah, can you hear the audio?
Been talking to a lot of
Is the audio
hires.
playing? Okay, so I'm gonna have this in full screen, and what we want you to do is to listen for the stories that Leah is talking about. She had a lot of new hires coming to her and talking about their challenges, and that's what she's going to lay out. She's going to be explaining all of the things she heard from the new hire perspective, and we can play it more than once if needed. But you're going to do that for your own actors. The main objective here is for you to get the feel for, okay, I'm listening and I'm capturing notes. All right. Okay, let's do this. Let me know if something else comes up.
Lately about their remote onboarding experience and how it's been in the past couple of months. For example, you started saying that they were waiting to receive documentation and things like that. Is that the first thing that happens after they accept the offer letter?
Yeah, so they receive and review the digital offer letter. And then some new hires are getting frustrated by how long it takes to get that letter. So that's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. There's also, then they have to sign the letter via DocuSign, and that is proving to be a little bit clunky. And then, and they need to then let their current employer know that they are resigning.
Mhm.
And then some other things that I'm hearing from some of the new hires is that they are receiving an email from the hiring manager to discuss a time to video chat. And this is happening for everyone. And that's kind of like a nice touch. So it's a positive thing that I'm hearing. But on the flip side, they're getting confused because they're receiving a number of invites from HR to discuss the whole onboarding process and meeting their new manager.
So what you gonna see for the next part of this video?
Okay, after they receive the email with the invite to,
So you're gonna hear it again and make sure you capture your notes as you listen to this. You don't have to necessarily view it, just listen for it.
to introduce themselves, you know, with the hiring manager and HR. You mentioned there was some confusion there. Can you elaborate on that and tell us pretty much what happens in after that?
Yeah, so they're just getting a lot of different invites from various people. They're also getting DMs on LinkedIn from some of their new coworkers. We're hearing that this is a good practice, and the new employees are really liking that. And then what I'm hearing next is that they're getting emails from the hiring manager asking what kind of laptop they want. And so they're going on apple.com and looking at the specs. And then there's a few emails that are going back and forth to kind of settle on what they're gonna get. And then what I'm hearing from most people is that they're getting an email with the welcome kit attachments, but there's some confusion on which ones to read or fill in first. And so this creates a sense of like they're overwhelmed and not sure what to do.
And that email is coming from the hiring manager or the HR?
From the hiring manager. Digital forms are easier to fill out and the PDFs are causing some more.
Okay, I'll stop there. So if you were not, if you did not hear when you came in, what we're doing here right now is what usually happens in workshops is that you probably don't have 6 note takers taking notes of the same story, right? You probably have 1 or 2 note takers that are capturing notes, making sure they're getting all the information that they need. And then after that, what you kind of have to do is to build the alignment across the people representing that actor to make sure that the story that they heard makes sense to all of them. So what we're going to do is, let me put my timer because we're tight on time. I'm going to put my timer and we're going to have, you know, around 5 minutes to go over the story and see if anyone else needs wants to add anything to it. So feel free to copy paste your post-it if you feel like as I'm telling the story, there are elements of details or quotes that could illustrate that better. If not, we'll just go through it and it will mean that you agree with what the story that it's being laid down here. So the first thing that the hiring manager does is to reach out to the new hire and let the team know about new hire, that a new hire is joining the team. And they're asking, who is asking team to reach out via LinkedIn? Is the hiring manager asking them to do that, or is the team proactively doing that?
That was a hiring manager.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys
Short
agree?
question. So I have a short question before we go into detail. So these steps here, they come from the other team or?
No, this was Scott's version. So I selected one for us to discuss. So if there are pieces of information that your version can complement, just bring it over, just copy paste.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So they then, so the hiring manager asked the team to reach out via LinkedIn, and they pretty much now have to designate a buddy to offer advice to new hires. From that point on, They try to have a video call to explain the onboarding process with the new hire. Correct?
Yep.
And then they send them a digital welcome kit with bios about the team, pretty much the ways they work and process. Then there's a HR system notification. Can you explain to me what that's about? I'm not sure if I understand.
So he mentioned that he gets a lot of notifications from HR. It sounded like he wasn't even clear what all the things were. Right? He made a point like, what are all these notifications? Like, this is a lot of noise. That was one of the direct quotes.
Okay, I'm just turning into red just to emphasize that those were quotes, just to color code better.
Yeah, the one, yeah, the second one, like, this is a lot of noise. That's the quote.
Awesome.
You could tell he wasn't quite clear about what all those things were. Okay.
And then they eventually request new hire equipment. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah. So apparently, the IT, they want to have some type of meeting, consultation, to set up to order the right MacBook or Mac. He basically made a quote that says, IT doesn't like Macs or something like that, which is why they want to do the consultation. Got it.
And then they eventually pick softwares for new hires because, when you're selecting an equipment, you got to make sure that they have the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
Ask permission for new software. Is that?
Yeah. So apparently, if there's certain software, like even Miro, they said that they have to ask permission to install.
Okay.
And that depends on each hire might have a new different software to hire.
And then I'm guessing there's a moment here that the new hiring manager get together on campus to get a badge.
Yeah, so this seems to be a big pain point. The new hire has to go to campus, get a badge, and he kind of questioned, like, well, they're not going to be on campus. Why do they need a badge? But even if they're going to be working remotely, they still need to get a badge, still need to get fingerprinted, and all that.
Okay, awesome. Pick up hardware. Oh, they actually get the equipment. So, but
yeah, and then
the hire getting the equipment, or is it the hiring manager getting the equipment?
It's the new hire getting the equipment, and then the hiring manager has to be there to hand off the equipment.
Okay, I just moved that a little bit out because we're capturing the perspective of that actor, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we clear that up a little bit more. But that's great. All right, so I'm gonna stop right here. So what you could see from the conversation we pretty much had for this part, what happened was we were getting into the alignment, right? We were like, well, what was the actual story? What was happening that they told you, right? So we were fine tuning some language. We were making sure that the order made sense. We made sure that the details, not technical details, but the details of the story, like quotes and things like that, were captured to really bring the essence of the experience that they were going through. All right, anyone would like to add anything from your perspective from the moment that the hiring manager is reaching out to a new hire all the way to picking up the hardware that you don't see here?
I mean, just a comment. I already added a post-it here because I just remember him saying that it was odd for him the fact that they actually need this physical badge for a building they don't actually use right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll turn red too. So this is all these. I'm guessing the ones underneath are pretty much thoughts, right?
Yeah, that's our old habits die hard. Yeah, so try to kind of start.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It just helps us refine, right, what the story was. So that's awesome. All right, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna give you, as you can see on the right side of this artboard, you see your names with 3 little thumbs up right next to your name. I want you to drag the 3 votes you have to the areas. Let me just pull this one up that we didn't get to it. Sorry. I want you to, well, I guess you're doing it already. Awesome. So I want you to drag the thumbs up to the critical moments for the hiring manager. If you put your hiring manager cap on, if you're the hiring manager and you're going through that piece of the experience, where would you say are your most critical moments? So you have 3 votes, 2 minutes. Let's do this. So as you see here, the big sticky notes from each actors may or may not overlap with other actors. So for example, from a hiring manager standpoint, trying to have a video call explaining the onboarding process with new hire for the hiring manager, it was one of the critical moments you selected. But as you can see from a HR perspective, they had different moments, right? That for them were critical. And that could possibly provide you with some insights on what are we actually trying to look for as far as opportunities to either optimize or reimagine the onboarding, the remote onboarding experience. So how does it all come together? You might be wondering. How can we make a decision on what is important for the new hire, may not be important for the hiring manager, and may not even make sense to the HR person? What helps when you get to this point is to actually look at the criteria of the project that you're in. So for example, if you move over to the left, you're going to see that there's some outcomes we're trying to get out of from that experience. So that criteria, again, was defined for you, but in case of you conducting this experiment, this technique, you're going to have experience principles you're after, business outcomes that might be listed out, employee outcomes that might be listed out, customer outcomes that might be listed out. So you can use those as a way to funnel through this different meshed perspectives from different actors. Unfortunately, because of time, I'm only going to be able to do one little connection with you today, but hopefully you get the feel for how this could look like when you have, when you're facilitating this technique. So let's go over the new hire just for a second, because some of the outcomes we're trying to get out of here are not only from a new hire perspective, but also HR and hiring manager. We have outcomes towards feeling safe, efficiency towards how can considering how can the onboarding, remote onboarding experience be more efficient? How can the remote onboarding experience be more personable? How can the remote onboarding experience provide a more connectivity amongst people? So let's just pick one for now and see what we can find here in the mesh. So let's talk about feeling safe. Apparently there was a moment from a hiring manager perspective that they needed to meet the new hire to hand off hardware. Considering the context that we live today, through a pandemic and, new ways of working and interacting, this feels like a hot area for the hiring manager. Let's see what's the perspective from a new hire at that point is. What he says, or she, sorry, in that case, it's Leah. She has a little area here where she says, filling out a form to access campus, coordinating time to meet, go to campus. Parking can be confusing, and many new hires are showing up at the same time, which is making the help center a bit crowded and makes social distancing more difficult. We get complaints about this all the time. So, well, yeah, that was Leah talking about the new hire perspective. So there is a shared moment here where the new hire and the hiring manager are meeting, right? And it may or may not be an area you would want to explore as an opportunity. To provide the remote onboarding experience, to provide a safer, remote onboarding experience. Let's see if we can choose another one. So as you saw what I did, I pretty much just connected the two the two areas that they are connected and shared. And then we would potentially turn into to the subject matter experts and the participants in the room and be like, what else is happening in that moment, in that shared moment interaction that you feel like it could either be a pain point or something that that happens currently that you're not necessarily, oh, I have people coming back. Okay, that you're not necessarily aware of. So as you go along, you would see, you know, more connections, more areas from different perspectives, using that criteria of the outcomes to potentially find new ways to look at this experience across actors, because each of them is bringing their experience, but they're all ultimately trying to reach for the same outcome, the same goal of either, you know, in our case, the one that we just walked through was how to feel safe, how might the remote onboarding experience provide a safer experience for those who are onboarding at this time. Okay, so we have everybody. We have actually a team back, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's PQ's team. Welcome back.
We are back. We're back. We need Jeff.
Is Jeff back too? I can't see it from here.
No, I don't think it is. Let's see.
Okay. So I'll bring them back, and now we're gonna have a quick Q&A from my team, just letting you know. They are back because now it's time for us to wrap things up since it's 10 to 2. And we'll have a few more things that we'd like to reinforce with you and possibly answer some questions. All right, let me bring Jeff back. They should be able to come back if they want to, but it's going to close in 48 seconds.
So while I wait for Jeff, what he will be doing is talking briefly about how that sense-making method that we just did kind of flows into some other methods that you're probably familiar with, and maybe some others you might not use. All right, Jeff, you're on mute and you're ready.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I hope you had a great session, and I think I heard Patrick kind of giving a quick overview. So yeah, we just wanted to just kind of wrap up with what we just went through and show you how it connects to these other methods. Again, to reinforce, this mesh is something that you can use really early on. It's meant to be a pretty simple technique, even though we had a very complex activity today. But it's a pretty simple technique that you can engage a lot of people with and get a quick understanding of who the different actors are, what their relationships are, where they have shared moments and whatnot. So what I wanted to talk about to just wrap this up is, what do you do with that? So Patrick, since you're driving, if you don't mind going to the next slide. One of the first things you can do, and we tried to do this in the activity, but you may not have gotten to it, is actually use the mesh itself to identify where there are opportunities to inspire ideation. So you look at the mesh, and as what we're doing in the mesh, you know, you're identifying these shared moments, maybe conflicting moments, or uncovering where there are gaps. You can use that next to start to prioritize. These moments seem really important. Let's tag them. Let's use them to brainstorm, define it as an opportunity space, and then use that. You know, we at Harmonic, we use the venerable "how might we" statements to really drive brainstorming. So what you could do is you could look at where there is a shared moment and ask, you know, do some brainstorming about what do we want to do in that moment for all of the actors in one go, and generate that, and then use that to inspire ideation. So that's one way that you can use it. And as I just finished talking to my group about this, we like to produce moment briefs for each of the moments, at least the key moments, and those are comprised of basically for each actor, what is each actor's functional needs in that moment, what are their emotional needs in that moment, and then what outcomes are they trying to get out of that moment. And by looking at it across multiple actors, you can get a sense of what the shared outcomes for all of those actors need to be across the spectrum of people that we're servicing. And then it really helps you to take a step back and think about, how do we design this moment for everyone, not just the customer, or in this case, not just for the employee. So it's a really powerful technique to do that. And so, as I mentioned, use that for brainstorming. So another technique that's really useful, and this actually is one that you can use to inform your mesh activity, is ecosystem mapping. You know, ecosystem mapping is really good for identifying all the actors that are in the system, what some of their interactions look like with touch points or other services that are part of the system itself. So after you do that, go ahead and do the next. You can use that to identify who are the actors in the ecosystem that we want to prioritize. And then you take those actors and you use that as the seed material for the mesh that we just did. So in our workshop, we didn't do that. We kind of provided the actors for you, but you could have done an ecosystem mapping exercise prior to that to identify who do we need to include. And in fact, in our workshop, I'll just share a little bit there, we identified another actor that we didn't have, which was the buddy. Like our group said, hey, getting assigned a buddy is a big deal for the employee. And I said, well, that's interesting because we didn't include them as one of the actors. And so we did at the very end. So cool. Next, jobs, pains, gains, right? So that's typically used for getting you to value propositions. But if you're starting to get an understanding of how we're thinking about the moments, you can use those moments and kind of the content in the briefs to define jobs that might span across several moments that kind of summarize a series of moments. Or you can go into a specific moment and break that down into more micro level jobs, right? So you can kind of go above the moment and you can go below the moment to start to identify jobs. And then you can use those jobs and map them onto the JPG canvas, and then use that as the starting point for, you know, what are the pains and the gains, and then pull that over to the value proposition if that's the direction that you're going with it. And again, from a mesh perspective, I think what's really interesting, and often what you don't do with jobs, pains, gains, is you kind of focus on just one actor. And what we have now is seed material for doing a jobs, pains, gains for every actor that's in the system, right? And when you think about creating a value proposition for all of the actors, that could become really, really powerful. All right, so another thing you can do is use it for contextual research, right? As you start to work through the mesh, you can start to see these moments seem very similar. Are they really the same moment? Or what could we do to make them more similar so that we can start to design for a more cohesive experience? So you can start to identify all sorts of areas for further inquiry, right? It could be, we actually don't know a lot about this actor at all. Maybe they weren't in the session. Maybe it's just something we've never spent a lot of time on. You can go next. So you could look at picking a specific actor. You could pick a series of shared moments that you want to go and research. You could even pick individual moments, because there could be a moment for an individual actor that's so important that we didn't really think about, that we want to just understand that more. So again, fantastic seed material for understanding what you need to learn more about. And then for the service designers that are in the group, you know and love service blueprints, as we all do. You can use the moments that we identify in the mesh to start to as a baseline or a framework for doing a service blueprint. So you start to look at, well, what does it take to operationalize a series of moments? And because we have multiple actors, then we can start to think about what might it look like if we started to align those moments and said, how do we deliver the service for more than one actor at the same time? And so go ahead and go to the next one. So you can start, this is kind of a dual actor blueprint where we've got one actor across the top, and in the middle section, in the greenish section, that's the service provider, the system level, the backstage that's supporting the actor on the top. But then on the bottom, we have a secondary actor who's also going through a similar experience or shared experience is being facilitated by all the systems and the backstage stuff in the middle. So again, the main point there is you use the moments that we've identified in the mesh as a baseline framework for the story narrative that we want to actually blueprint further down in a typical project lifecycle. So that was just a quick smattering of how you can use this. We didn't want to just say, here's a cool technique and not give you a sense of what to do with it. But it does connect up with a lot of different techniques that we all know and love. So we have 2 minutes for final reflections.
I don't know if they'll kick us out of the room. We'll definitely will stay for to chat if we don't get thrown out. So we'll see what happens.
Can we get the presentation?
Yes, you will. Yes, yeah. We'll get you the presentation. Carol, how do we do that?
I don't know. I'll have to check with Gabby and SDN.
Yeah, I think it goes somewhere on Borella that's being used for the networking and stuff and things. So we'll have a PDF of the presentation up there for just for you.
Yeah, you'll get it on your email.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I think I just put something in the chat. You know, this technique, I think is good to mapping out nonlinear journey. So sometimes, you know, it's not chronological logical order by time. And I think another takeaway from me is I think I'm currently dealing with very complex service blueprint, and I think this methodology is helped me to not only see the one linear journeys and articulating others to supporting this, but this is just see everything in a parallel and then matching up together. That's very much easier than focusing on one and just.
Yeah, having done those of us have done blueprints, you can get really mired in the details and getting into a lot of things, especially operational and technologies and all of that. And you spend all that time, you kind of lose sight of the people. And then the ones that are not the customer, or whoever is the protagonist, the lead of that blueprint, kind of become just blocks like all the other blocks.
Yeah.
I love blueprinting. I've taught it for years, done it for years, but it can be dehumanizing if you really think about it. And so a goal of this method is to really put the focus back on people. And then we'll still do blueprints when we need to figure out all the other moving parts. But instead of say starting with a current state blueprint of the onboarding experience, what if we did something like this? And how does that get people to think differently? The other subtle thing that's happening here is, and this is a battle in organizations, and if you can get the ability to do it, is we're trying to tackle all these things as one problem, right? Not separate things. So, one team's thinking about this new employee experience and making a blueprint showing what all the other people are doing. But meanwhile, in those groups, they're doing process mapping, thinking about how they're going to improve their job. And then everyone is dreaming up different future experiences where everyone else is part of their world. And we were like, no, you're all part of the same thing. And so this is a very easy entry way to get people thinking that way. And then you can break it down into those different parts. But it's getting people to think a little bit differently in a way that's, we think, is pretty accessible after doing it a few times. Like as stakeholders that we've done it with, they have fun doing it.
I think it would be good to do it in a co-creation type of way, because I think each actor will have a different perspective on what's important. But I also think that at some stage then you need to bring in actors who may not be involved in the relationships here, but like finance or CEOs, because there's often a constraint. Like, for example, it could be the availability of space.
Right.
That causes a trade-off, and I think it's just good to have that layer as well, but at a very late stage.
That's kind of the bringing those lenses on at the right time, right, as part of the trick is when do you apply that thinking to it. But yeah, there's for example, in regulated businesses, there's always something lurking in the shadows that other people know why, right? That what might be one of the barriers is.
Yes. And it's very good for the other actors to learn the other actor's perspective. It's really good, and that can take hours, those workshops, I think.
Yeah, that is like Carol said at the beginning, like in every project has its own constraints, but like where you can open it up and have people hear from one another. And when we're doing this in say like in a digital environment, it would have been we sent people off and then they come back and we start connecting it, and there's all these aha moments, right? Because they're used to thinking about their perspective. They spend time visualizing their perspective, but then when they see it next to someone else's, that little light bulbs go off. And so that's a way that we do it digitally, is that little bit of surprise. People think differently. People have different experiences, and it's trite, but it does really help.
Yeah, I had a question. So I'll probably have to go back to my team and say that what this mesh technique, so what does it help me do in this whole service design? So what would be one or two things that you think I could go and tell my team that because we did this, we can do something better than what we did in the past?
Carol?
That's a great slide right there.
Okay.
Yeah, that you probably didn't experience all these 4 things that the mesh can do for you, but it's pretty much going towards providing a space for a discussion to rethink some things or to consider different elements or aspects of experience, of the service experience, that you were not able to think about it before because you were either taking a customer-centric point of view or an employee-centric point of view, and you were not necessarily bringing them as equals into the service experience. So you were not necessarily, not that it is a bad thing, but you were probably not considering, because you never thought that you could focus beyond one protagonist. This one does help you add, protagonist stories into one view, and you can think at a larger scale. And by doing that, you're pretty much pressure testing, the knowledge that you have about that experience. And those, come into the aha moments when you surface shared moments or critical moments that might be for one actor, may not be for another one. But then you weigh into your project and the outcomes you're trying to reach, right? So the criteria is also important in that perspective, to help you funnel through what you want to focus first.
Another thing is it's pretty, while you can spend a lot of time on it if you want, it's pretty fast for rapid discovery is what we found. And so one selling point for it would be we can do this really quickly.
Okay.
And it helps us get to that information. So I took a screenshot and dropped it into the chat. You'll get a link to the whole presentation, but in case you just since you were asking, I put that there for you.
Do you believe?
Yeah. Go ahead.
As a rapid calibration, it is good enough if you have just one interview with one type of actor. Have you used it that way?
In terms of just having like we did in the video, like just having one person speak to it instead of like a group of people that are kind of talking about that one. We have done it mainly, I think, in groups, but probably sometimes, Carol, I think we have had sometimes just one representative sometimes from one group, right?
The ways we prototyped it was focused on the end-to-end view. So we had to bring different people that could speak to different pieces of the experience.
This is what I'm getting, but I mean one representative for one actor, one interview for one actor.
Yeah, we try to have multiple perspectives, but at least having one person represent, and then that might lead to further discussions that might inform kind of where some of the discovery or research may need to go to talk to more people. Because as you can imagine, there's running into availability and just getting people in the same place at the same time for 2 hours, right? But what we try to do is have multiple representatives, so you get some different perspectives and not just one person's perspective.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to that. I was going to say, especially if you're doing this at the onset of a project or initiative, you have to take anything that comes out of the mesh as effectively a hypothesis that needs to be tested.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an important note, Jeff. Like in our practice, we do cycles. We do lots of cycles built off of hypotheses. And so this is kind of like jumpstart. And in the past, other methods we've used are things like, doing like little very simple journey models, or doing current state blueprinting, or just like getting a sense from a few people what's going on. And then that gives us enough to get moving and dive deeper. What we found in using this method is that it gets us those different perspectives and start to introduce our point of view, which is that the experience of every actor is part of the design problem, right?
Basically, you could use it before the research to set up the research.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Most of the things that we prototype, most of the context, the situations we prototyped already, they were all to inform what is actually the project scope in this situation. Are we looking towards enabling, reimagining the employee experience about a certain aspect? Or are we looking towards maybe some sort of interaction that, in our case, the new hire and the hiring manager need to have so that you can enable a better experience? And it could shift the project earlier in the process, saving you money, so you wouldn't have to I think we're going this way. And then after research, you hypothesize again. So we're pretty much suggesting to bring it forward and earlier to the process.
What I like about this is that you can also do it in an asynchronous manner, like how you guys did the video. You videoed the interviews first and then shared it, or you can actually have the people come in and do it as well. It's kind of cool because I work in a company where everybody's in different time zones. So that's pretty cool.
One thing that we had hoped to do, and then we realized it was a limitation of Miro, is we wanted to it'd be cool if you could record people and then drop the video into Miro and then start to visualize it. But unfortunately, when you interact with the video, when you interact with a sticky note or any object, it stops the video. So we've put in that request. So one day we hope that we could have this kind of thing where you could collect all, like in your instance, you could collect all these videos and then deconstruct it and start showing the connections, right? And have a little storyboard, like literally a board of stories.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
All right. Carol and Jeff might be able to stay longer, but I have to go chat with a client, unfortunately. Well, not for them, but anyway, bye. Thanks for coming today. And
one last question.
Stay and take some questions if you guys have some.
Yep.
I have one question. That's what after the mesh? What is the next? So you said everything that comes out is a hypothesis. So then how do we validate the hypothesis?
Yeah, I would say it kind of depends on what your resources are, but I would use it primarily as I would use it probably in two ways. I would use the mesh to identify opportunity spaces, like where are some moments, where do we want to reimagine what this experience looks like, and those concepts that you would come up with from that activity would start to flesh out your hypothesis, right? It's like we have this understanding of what we think the experience is, and we have this vision of what we want it to be. And then I would again use the mesh to, as we just talked about, kind of tee up further inquiry in terms of like doing some primary research. And so where do we still have questions? Where are the moments that we want to, if we're redesigning some of these moments and we're conceptualizing a different future state for these, let's go and make sure we fully understand what's happening currently. And not just for quote unquote the customer, but for every actor. Let's look at it from all of those different perspectives. And then I would bring those concepts of the reimagined future to that inquiry. Like I would do both a generative and evaluative, like both sides of the coin in those sessions, and get a sense of what their experience looks like, so you can better define it, and then say, what if, right? And then that's how you start to test the hypothesis. Like, do we understand it correctly, and are we thinking about a change correctly as well?
Yeah, the one that I used before was in a Actually, the mesh informed the scenarios that we were going to prototype, some concepts, that scenarios that we would prototype. So it really speeded up the process, because towards the end of the conversation, we're like, oh, okay, so we need to figure out, between these actors, when they have a share moment, let's bring that share moment, illustrate it, and build a storyboard to take it to the field and test if that's actually happening. So it's a really cool way to do it.
I just want to ask if you prioritize in some way these moments, because when you look at this map at the beginning, it looks very messy, and it's even hard for me to identify really how do you, well, I see these big cards, but then probably the connection, it will be another indicator, but I don't know how do you prioritize them, and how do you, because it might be overwhelming, the insights, like a lot of things here. Even if we look, we can maybe focus more on the experience of the employee, or maybe an experience of the HR manager, no? So you can jump from one to another and be a bit confused.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, Carol. That's exactly right. And if you recall, when we first started talking about the role of the note taker, that's really critical, because it's part of that prioritization you're talking about. You will learn that from the discussion that's had as you're creating the mesh. As you're talking through, making those connections, evaluating what are the key areas you want to focus on. You're kind of building alignment within the group that's there, but you're also hearing the arguments for and against it. So you still kind of capture it, and it's kind of, that's a snapshot, but it's the nature of the conversation that's being had around it that puts a little more flesh on the bones there. So that's one thing. You can kind of go back to the notes and really suss out afterwards, like, is this really the right area? You can do a voting with the group, right? Just to where whatever resonated with them, you can get a sense from that perspective. And that's another layer of prioritization that you can add on that. And then as kind of the core design team, you can go back and analyze what's going on. Because again, this isn't meant to be the answer. It's like, if you've got too many competing things, then maybe you devise another way to narrow it. It's like, are you look for opportunities to cluster them? Can these be, can this area be worked on together with this area? Can they be combined? Or if it's like, well, they want to prioritize everything, and there's like 15 or 20 things. It's like, okay, well then maybe a subsequent workshop to work through that. It's like, okay, here, that was the first pass. Now we have to narrow down even further. So there's different ways to do it. Again, this isn't meant to be a deliverable or an answer. It's meant to be a starting point for follow-on work.
Yeah, if I could add to that, in terms of prioritizing, it could be overwhelming to look at the mesh and be like, how do we go from here? I would also add an important factor there. When you're conducting this discovery sense-making technique, you need to have the right people in the room. The right people, I mean, the people that can influence this thinking and can represent different aspects of the experience in case the project needs to shift gears. Those people who were there could explain why they need to shift. Why do they need to prioritize certain areas over the others? Because if they're not there to listen, to experience, and to discuss, it's going to be really hard to change their, people from outside and bringing them in. What is this, right? So I think to your question, I think having the right people being brought in earlier in the discussion could really help.
A quick question.
The opposite direction where it's not quite messy enough. Have you tried this in a non-linear experience, like an audit or a hospital visit, where you can't neatly bookend it?
I haven't. So that's a great, I want to try that. The only thing that I would say that it wasn't so linear was the B2C customer experience from a grocery pickup experience. She kind of went around some circles. She's like, I had to stop my car at the pickup spot, and then I had to call, nobody picked up, I had to call it again. So it wasn't like a linear thing, but the moment that she was going through was pretty much linear because she needed to get there, get their groceries, and go back home. But there were things that she was experiencing that it wasn't linear. One of the things that we try to solve for that in terms of visuals is to add that little gray box and add some arrows between this non-linear thing, but it would be really interesting to see it as a whole end-to-end story, how would that look like?
Have you used this in kind of like a design sprint environment, or kind of within a design sprint process?
We haven't thought about that way. The one thing, if you want to test that out, sure, I think it's a good opportunity. I would just be cautious to do it to try to get, so the level of detail from a design sprint might be in the more granular level than you would want from a discovery perspective. So when you're into a design sprint, you pretty much have at least your problem area defined, right? So you're looking at, we're looking at a specific piece that we're trying to build off of, or have ideas on how to actually make it happen and imagine how it could look like. I would say this one could inform a design sprint perspective probably, but I'm not sure if it would fit into a design sprint perspective, if that makes sense.
Right, thank you.
I have one more question related to this moment zoom, because we didn't have time to cover during in our group, and I'm just not sure how to jump. I understand that we choose the moment which we want to explore more, but I don't know how you create this need. It's a part of the map you created before, and you try to say if it's a need or the outcome, or how do you work with this framework?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. Hopefully it'll be a good answer. I think it's something that comes after. So after you've got a sense, and even after doing the mesh, you may come back and kind of massage the moments and shape them a little more so they're kind of at the right level. Because it's probably even in your group, you had some people that were probably very step oriented and some people who were very, very high level. I like to think of moments. If you think about like getting ready in the morning, like if that was the experience, grinding the coffee beans is probably too granular. Like that wouldn't be a moment. But then having breakfast is too broad, right? That's too big. So it's more like making coffee. That's a pretty good moment. Enjoying coffee is a good moment. Preparing breakfast, eating breakfast, cleaning up the dishes. Those are kind of all moment levels. So you probably shape things to kind of get at that right level. Again, that's afterwards. And then once you've got a good set of moments or what you're comfortable with, then you can go in and start to, like, some of the things, some of the steps, or some of the thinking or the feeling that you captured around that might get consumed into that reshaped moment, right? So you can use that information to start to define the brief in the zoomed in view. So it's something that you can, again, write a hypothesis for about what you think the actor's functional and emotional needs are and what their outcomes are, but you won't really have that answer until you go and do the research, whatever that is. It could be stakeholder interviews, it could be observational stuff, contextual, whatever it is. But once you come back with that understanding, that real world understanding, then you can come back and formalize that brief. Like, what is really going on in this moment? So that's where the information would come from.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up. Gabby's like.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Can I have one question? Yeah.
Gabby, can we take one more?
If it takes like 2 minutes, because we have to go to another meeting.
I'll be very quick. Do you believe it is, and I'm speaking fast, do you believe it is possible, it makes sense to have a project with many actors, while some of them are key actors and some of them are not key actors? I have an example. In the bank, I was doing the project. You have operational risks, credit risk, you have legal, you have retail employee, you have director of the branch, you have a customer, so on and so forth. So 8 or 7. And now I'm thinking back, we had them all in the room and they actually all were actors. So we had cross-functional and cross-vertical, but not all of them were involved with the same intensity. Have you had that kind of experience?
Yeah, not with that many actors.
No.
Probably what we would do is prioritize from that list, you know, and I guess it would also come down to what the scope of the project is. Like, are we trying to redesign the experience for all of these actors, or are we really focusing on a handful of them?
It's actually but all of those risks and so on and so forth, they do influence it.
Yeah. That's a really great question. I'd have to think about, like, is there an upper limit to how many actors you can include before it just becomes unmanageable? It's a really great question. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. This was great fun for us. I hope it was good for you too.
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you. Very
Thank you.
thoughtful. Thank you.
I want to do it again.
Awesome.
Awesome.
See you later. Thank you so much.
Thanks.